This is Jeremy. Welcome to Eighthworld. Good evening, everybody. This is Jeremy once again. I am recording this on the evening of May the 23rd because tomorrow I will be running the grill again. It's becoming a pretty standard ritual for my weekends off. I'm actually enjoying it, happy for it. It's a good time. Wish you could be there. Today is going to be a bit of a rambling video, but it will all eventually relate back to comic books, one of my great passions. So, to begin this winding path, I was told when I was younger that my moderate leanings meant I didn't stand strong for anything. I've heard others refer to people in the middle of the aisle as milquetoast or weak, but I don't think you have to be a fighting mad extremist to take a stand for something. I have strong opinions, believe it or not. And today, I'll share a controversial one. There is something redeeming in any piece of art, and anything crafted by a human mind to tell a story or convey a meaning, an emotional truth, is art. It is not the exclusive domain of any certain group, agenda, social class, or college major, for that matter. Now, to unite these seemingly disparate points, I despise a one or the other mindset in fandom. All these people who, for example, feel the need to argue the superiority of either Star Trek or Star Wars over the other is engaged in a fool's errand, in my opinion. Taste cannot be quantified. You enjoy what you enjoy. The heart wants as the heart wants. It is all subjective. I feel the same in the argument over whether Marvel or DC is the better comic book universe, and I have much to say about that conflict here. I have read I don't know how many comic books in my life, from all of the medium's eras, and from a variety of voices and perspectives. I even wrote my master's thesis on American comic books. I've also read many webcomics, European comics, Japanese manga, Korean manhwa, if that's how that's pronounced, etc. And I equate comics of all derivations. The term graphic novel for me isn't some gatekeeper term that separates superhero and non-superhero comics. In fact, I don't like the term graphic novel at all. And I say all this simply to display my credentials, not to try to insist I know everything there is to know about comic books. In another life, I may have become an English professor and focused on comics in my studies. Now, the meat of this episode. Comparing the two big American comics publishers. Marvel may be consistently more entertaining on the whole, but I feel that DC turns out many more iconic stories. I feel this may be the chiefest difference between them. Let me go deeper with that. Perhaps what DC does with a big gut punch, Marvel spreads out over a long run. Marvel doesn't have something like The Dark Knight Returns, though some might make a case Old Man Logan is close in some ways. But take, say, Chris Claremont's X-Men work from the same era, the mid to late 80s onwards, which is consistently thoughtful about the struggles of the day as well, just like The Dark Knight Returns was. To bump it up in time a bit, where DC had All-Star Superman in the early 2000s, Marvel had Brian Michael Bendis' run on the New Avengers and Mark Millar's run on the Ultimates, the latter of which was a strong inspiration for the form that the MCU Avengers took. It's definitely worth going back and reading. Now, this isn't to compare the subject matter of those superhero stories per se, but to examine what the offerings are across time periods within the same time period. And I'll never say that one company is fundamentally better than the other. To be fair, I feel that they vacillate between outdoing each other quite regularly. They've both made excellent choices, and they've both made rather poor choices. The medium itself isn't perfect, but damn if it isn't entertaining. Further, where Marvel has conquered live-action film, DC dominates animation. DC's films, with a few exceptions like Wonder Woman or Joker, have been lackluster at best. Marvel's animation in recent years has been largely non-existent, with the notable exception of Into the Spider-Verse, which was fantastic. But if DC only ever had the original Batman the Animated Series to lean on, it would still rule that medium. The point of all this isn't to ignite a war between loyal factions by any means, but simply to state my position that we can enjoy both sides of something simultaneously, while being aware of the relative limits of both as well. In fact, learning to appreciate both sides of a competition or conflict by force of habit will yield a far deeper, and I dare say far more fair, view of all of human affairs, from relationships to wars. This is my perspective on it. And one more point before I wrap up, I promise. Superhero comics are important to American culture in general because they are a modern form of myth-making. They allow the United States, which is a composite culture, to create its own identity and cast its own mythic heroes. This was the core of Jack Kirby's work, a point I will return to in future comics-themed episodes. Comics hold a grandiose mirror up to our faces and make us look at the ugly and the beautiful in ourselves in ways no other art form can. The superhero reminds us that we can be great, inspires us to be more than we are, that we compare the most heroic members of our population with superheroes in times of crisis. Every time there is a crisis, just look now at how we look at healthcare workers with the COVID pandemic. This is telling. To those who dismiss the superhero as a childish power fantasy, I have to say that simply being something a child might enjoy does not make something childish. In fact, I think that turning away from what we love as children for whatever reason is one of the chief disservices we can commit against ourselves. This is what I talk about when I talk about comics. In future episodes, I think I'll focus more on my particular preferences when it comes to comic books. I can have a lot of fun with that. How about some themed lists? I have lots of ideas for that. Toss me some recommendations or ideas if you'd like as well. So, who's your favorite superhero? And what's your favorite comic book, superhero or not? As I said, I don't discriminate between them. And I have a lot of favorites myself. I have a lot that I can talk about here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And keep in mind, going forward, that I think that I am going to start theming this podcast more strongly around comic books and also the prose books that I'm reading currently. I think that so far this season of my podcast, if you will, I've shown my hand with the kinds of things that I have knowledge of and that I'm interested in, and I think that I have made peace with what the singular focus of this should be. So, with that said, Eighthworld Podcast is, and always shall be, sponsored by and partnered with Misplaced Muse Creative, a wonderful source of bookish gifts, hot beverages, and wax goods. Please be sure to check out their social media links in the episode description below, as well as my social media links in the episode description below. Please like this video. Please be sure to subscribe and follow along. Plenty of more content ahead. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all who have been listening this entire time, and welcome to any new listeners I might have picked up along the way. I promise you that there are going to be good times ahead. Thanks again. Have a good couple of weeks. Please feel free to drop comments or email me at any time.